Hey guys, Kylo here. I wanted to come at you today with some thoughts on something that I find is pretty commonplace. Now this could go off into so many different directions. We're talking about sort of pilot psychology today. Anxieties and fears, things that, you know, the human brain is wired in such a way that we're very weary of the unknown, right? And so flying is basically unknown. I mean, when I was a small child, I've thought about this my whole life, you know, how to fly, how does it work? How do these things that are flying fly? And it's just been a constant study for me from when I was young until now when I am clearly older. But I remember the first time that I got to control an aircraft, and I gotta tell you, I was white-knuckled a little bit. It was a day not too unlike today, kind of murky. Can you tell? I know that's good content, but I'm no good judge of content, I promise you that. But I am a good judge of flight, and teaching people to fly these paramotors for so many years now, I've come to see some commonalities in people that do not have flight experience until they get on a paramotor. And I see a whole different host of reactions, and I feel like the majority of them, if you just give yourself a little bit of, psychologize yourself a little bit and just know that it's okay to have anxieties, all right? Having anxieties, you want to get rid of those before you do your flights. You don't want to go flying with a lot of anxieties about it. If you just relax and trust that the thing's gonna work and you're gonna make the right moves at the right times, and you'll practice those moves and rehearse them in your mind, and then go out and try it. And it's different. The progression's different for everyone. Obviously, again, going back to the many different directions we could go with this type of conversation, most people are gonna have some anxieties. You gotta push through that shit, guys. You gotta push through it, and you gotta get over that. Now, you can have, what's the word I'm dreaming of? You can have apprehensions. And that's a little bit different. You can be a bit apprehensive, but you still got to look at it from sort of a third-party perspective. Don't try not to look at it from inside your mind, but look at it from outside, like from a third-party perspective. Flight is a three-dimensional thing, so you got to look at it from a third dimension. All right, you got left, right. You also have up and down. And something that I've been saying pretty common recently is, the dirt's what hurts. So the trick to flying is to get speed, get away from the dirt. And then when you're coming back to the dirt, you got to come in with that speed. Again, tangent city. But there are things that you don't know, and that's where the ground study comes in, right? If you study it pretty intently on the ground, it really relieves a lot of the apprehensions and anxieties about doing a flight. That's what the training is. A lot of people want to just buy the gear, and the reason that I suggest not do that is, buy a book. Buy an instructor. Buy anything but the gear, all right? Buy some knowledge. Once you have the knowledge, that'll alleviate a lot of the questions, the anxieties, the apprehensions, the mistakes that could be made. It's important to study mistakes, what people do. That gives me an idea of a good video. I don't have ideas for videos very often, but the big mistakes, and rehearsing not doing those could go a long way towards not making them. And I don't want to say focus on the mistake, but do know where they're at, know how people make them, put that in your back pocket. What you want to focus on is good technique. That should be the primary focus during a first flight, is good technique. It is a technique-driven thing. It is the way you move, the way the gear is connected to your body, the timing application of the throttle, the wind speed. Man, wind speed's variable. We could bust it down into 1 to 10 miles an hour, but then you can also break it down into every half a mile an hour. Your technique is going to vary with every half a mile an hour of wind change. Just a little bit. And of course, you go from 3 miles an hour to 9 miles an hour, techniques are vastly different. That's because it was a whole bunch of the little bits that stacked up. Not all forwards are the same. You can do a forward in 0, 1, 1.5, 3, 6.5 mile an hour, 5.2 mile an hour. I've gone too far with this gizzard. This is terrible content. Gizzard agrees. But anyhow, what I'm trying to say is, the techniques are variable. The timing is variable. That's why you practice. That's why you practice doing inflations, and you do so much work on the ground. That's where really the guys who do the best work on the ground, they have the most success at their flights. And that's just a given. That's just a given. It's a fact of business. There are very few pure naturals in the world. If you're coming here looking and you don't know anything about it, you may be a natural. Again, oftentimes it just kind of have that click moment, and it happens different. Some people, man, there's been a handful of guys I say, hey, no, do this. After one mistake, they start making the proper mistakes. But in some of those same guys, I still see the anxieties and the mental gymnastics that they're trying to do to wrap around flight. Study on it, think of it. If you're gonna do it, it's because you want to fly. To me, it's the best way to fly. I've flown a bunch of different stuff. I can't afford helicopters and rocket ships, but paramotors, yes. Yes, paramotors, yes. I like all things that fly, but for the price of a ATV four-wheeler, you can get gear and education for less than the price of some of these new ATVs. Some of these new ATVs cost $50,000. Gizzard, did you know that? Different world we living in. But this way to fly is just pure flight. And if you study on it, you do it right, that'll relieve a lot of that. Get the training, get the knowledge. The gear's there. People sell gear every day. There's more and more of it on the street every single day. It's just, there's piles of gear. Just don't buy anything. You don't need the gear first. You don't. So there's a lot of topics crammed into this one little video. I don't know where I was going with it. I forgot my wallet. I was going down to the chicken stand. They reopened the chicken stand in town, and I was really craving some of that good chicken. Well, I got almost to town, and I didn't have my wallet with me because I was petting the dog. He was excited. I was going to let him ride to town with me to get the chicken. You can still ride to town with me, Gizzard, but I got to go get my wallet, and then we'll continue this video. So on my first flight, I remember it was a bit turbulent. It was overcast. It was a relatively high ceiling, but I caught myself white knuckling the yoke, both hands, fisting it hard. Oh, it was just terrible technique. I was not a good pilot on that first one. But a lot of that probably had to do with I did not know anything about airplane flying, like directly. I'd not studied it. I didn't have the knowledge. I called somebody. First thing I did, try to find some knowledge. That's a smart move on my part. Of course you have to if you're gonna. I didn't know you could fly anything other than airplanes. I figured out who was the closest airplane instructor to me, and like, hey man, I hear you teach airplane instruction. I even know, we're friends. I even know what you did for a living. So just like, yeah man, how could you not know that? And we never talked about that. I was like, I guess not. It was always football and drugs was the conversation, I reckon. So he's like, come out to the airport tomorrow, right? And so I didn't have time to research anything. I was just like, oh good, I'm gonna go fly an airplane tomorrow. It was a discovery flight. So I just showed up, hopped in. He's like, get in the pilot seat. This is how you crank it. This is how you go, you know? And I'm like, hell, you drive it with your feet, not your hands. Hell, if I'd read about any of this stuff, I would have known. And I would have had a little less. I'm not big on anxiety. I don't get a lot of anxiety. I did have some apprehensions that day, and I guess I felt myself showing physical signs of anxiousness. You know, white knuckling the yoke is where it all I realized, like, damn, I'm tense. Why am I tense? I said, just relax. And if you relax, you're gonna perform far better no matter what, but especially flying. You don't have to be limp-wristed exactly, but it doesn't take much to bend air. I mean, you're just bending air. We're air bending. And there's a technique to it. And once you figure that out and get a good feel for bending that air with a wing, with an airplane empennage, with whatever. Imagine these squirrel suit flyer guys, they probably got a good feel on the air too. Need a lot of it though. The faster it moves, the more dense it becomes. So it's a fluid, and we're just carving through this fluid. It's almost like swimming. You know, a lot of people have this apprehension, this anxiety of falling. Like, I'm afraid I'm gonna fall out of the sky. And certainly if you lose your wing, you will. But it's extremely hard to f it up so bad that you lose your wing. You've got to make a terrible decision before you even go. I mean, equipment failure is almost unheard of. It is heard of. There's been equipment that has failed for sure, but it's such a rarity. I don't even include it on the list of risk factors. Modern equipment in good condition, to fail, it would require some outside forces. We'll just put it like that. It would have to require some outside forces to just do a full-on failure, let you go, you fall to your death. It's not a thing. Not a common thing. So you can relax your anxieties about that. You look up at it, you see strings and straps, and you're hanging from this fabric up above you, and it is kind of mind-numbing, like, oh my God, this stuff can't hold me. When in actuality, it could probably hold you and your vehicle before it tore apart and let you go. Obviously, there's different vehicles in this world, but that wing could probably pick up a mid-sized sedan. You can hang a mid-sized sedan with you in it under a paraglider, and it would probably hold together. It would be a fast and spicy ass ride for sure, but the wing probably wouldn't break. So take that to heart. The harness that you're sitting in, under normal loading, they tested and held up to 15 G's. 15 G's for several seconds. You'd be asleep if you got something in that bad that you hit 15 G's. You're gonna go out before the shit breaks. So take that anxiety and just push it away, right? The other thing is just, control in your environment. And there's a class for that. Again, I teach you how to control the wing, how to do the flight, all aspects based on the weather conditions that we're actually gonna see. We draw little pictures. Put yourself here, don't go here. This is a danger spot, this is why. You put all that in the back of your head and we discuss it just like it's gonna be a radio failure, because that happens sometimes. When we're doing these first flights, the entire thing is rehearsed. What you do, how you do it. Sometimes one comm, sometimes two comms. I'm gonna fix up the comms. That's coming up in a couple of days. I'm gonna rework the entire pilot communication system, so we got backups, and it's kind of tucked out of the way afterthought. Comms always like last minute thing. I'm gonna do a whole class on comms from now on. You're gonna know how to operate all the comms without even thinking about it. Hey, one guy tried to restart, threw his radio, like eject. I didn't know he threw it down. I was telling him what to do to restart the motor. These are kind of things that we want to talk about before they happen, and if you've thought about it and discussed it and rehearsed it, and you're not rushed on doing a first flight, that's going to reduce the apprehension a lot. So that's why I've started doing it that way. Teaching this paramotor school is a constantly evolving thing. It is always in flux. I'm never tied down to just one method of learning. Like, you have to do it this way. It's worked most of the time, all of the time. No, you gotta adapt with each situation. Being adaptable, that's a big part of being a pilot. If you're relaxed and thinking straight, you can make quick, accurate decisions based on a calculation that you've done. A lot of that anxiety goes away. Once you push past, the gear's not gonna fail. I'm not gonna make a bad decision about weather. I'm not gonna put myself in a tight jam, low against trees, upwind, nothing like that. Then things you become less anxious. You realize that no matter what happens with that motor, you're gonna have a place to go. You've dialed in your landings because you've been practicing them. That's a big part of doing it. I'm sorry for those of you that only get to fly once a week, twice a month. That's just almost not enough. That's almost not enough. You need to be kiting on those other days. You should touch it every day. If you want to be proficient, you got to do it every day. Even if you just take it out of your house and practice folding your wing. I don't know, touch it. Just touch it, pick it up, smell of it. If you're touching it every day, you're gonna get good at it. It's just a bag of material and strings until you take it into that shape. Wing shape, airfoil shape. And that's what we're controlling. That's what we're using to bend the air and lift our bodies. That's it. You gotta understand how that thing moves and lifts and what it does in different situations. And again, all these things can be studied ahead of time and then practiced. And practice is a huge part of doing this sport. And without practice, you're always not going to be as good as the people who are practicing, which you should never compare yourself to. You're on your own journey. That's also a big error I see. I see people looking over to another person and saying, well, he started after me and he's doing better, and what's wrong with me? And their focus gets shifted from becoming better than they were to being as good as Joe Blow over here. Joe Blow may be an autistic Rain Man, can do it. Who knows? There's a few of those out there in sport too. You know what I'm talking about? Don't pick on the retarded kids. They're just some of the most loving people you could ever imagine. Well, guys, I'm almost at the chicken place. I just thought that I would share some thoughts about some things I've noticed with new pilots, some history about me being a new pilot, and some of the things that I felt and some of the reasons behind it. You got to take the psychological deep dive if you're going to bite off learning to fly and becoming a pilot and piloting a craft. There's so many different aspects. Important to study on all those. You need a teacher? I'm a teacher. I teach this stuff. Contact information is always in the description below. Feel free to do that if you picked up anything out of any of these videos. Also have a tip jar, patreon.com. Also link below. All right, I don't do a lot of advertising, so I'm gonna quit with the begging for handouts there. I appreciate you listening to this, coming along this ride with me to town to get the chicken. Right, Gizzard? Gizzard agrees, believe it or not. Yeah, he agrees. When he smells that chicken, he's gonna go haywire. All right, I'm gonna turn it off now, get this stuff uploaded and edited for you. I'll see y'all real soon next one. Much love. Kyle out.